Okay, this tutorial is again using Adobe Animate, an ActionScript 3 thing, to create a flying spaceship tutorial. Flying spaceship using the resources that I've grabbed. So, first up, we need to set up our stage, make sure that is correct. Here we need to focus on the correct frame rate that we want to use for our animation, the actual size and width. In this case, I know it is 500 by 500. And set a background color. I'm just going to throw in a dark blue there just to remind myself of some certain things for this animation. And the frame rate, well, we could drop it down to a classic online Flash animation style thing that was from the heydays of when Flash was actually big, which is 12 frames a second, which is enough to give a good impression of what's going on. In this case, I'm going to leave it at 24. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see the entirety of the stage and then switch over to my library. If you can't access or see any of these menus, just double check the windows and go to the right thing here. So if I click on library, it'll change the tab there to the appropriate thing. Now I need to import a bunch of stuff into my library. The first way is to go File, Import to Library. That's technique number one, but if we go here, I've already got the resources pre-grabbed, and all I'm just going to do is just drag and drop them into my library list down here and get rid of that. So this is the basics of the resources I need. I've got an asteroid, a sound, which you can see the sound wave there, a comet, the night sky, a spaceship, and a takeoff sound. So first off, I'm going to grab the night sky and drop it into here. This is why I wanted it to be 500 by 500, because that's the size of my night sky. And then on top of that, I'm going to drag in another one and make sure they lock in together so that the thing has got one continuous sky. This will then form my background layer. Now this animation I want to go on for about 8 seconds. So I'm going to just insert a frame there, and that's my night sky all set up. The trick here is I'm going to create a motion tween and create a recurring background. I'm actually going to use this outliner marker so I can see my stage. Grab these two things at the end, the last frame, sliding to the end, and then slide them basically straight across. So that the animation should, if I play it, transition quite slowly. Turning that on, you can see it there. That's now set up and done. So I can lock that layer and then add a new one. This new layer will be my spaceship. Yeah, spaceship. There's a couple of layers I need to add at this point, and I'll just do them now because it's also got my comet, not comment. Comet, and then finally sound FX. And labeling your layers like this is a really good technique so you know what's going on. So I'm going to hide that background layer because this is the part of the stage I'm really focusing on, and I'm going to deal with the spaceship next up. So making sure I'm on frame 1, I'm going to grab my spaceship PNG and just dump it on that layer. Looks a little patchy, which is unfortunate because when I edited it in Photoshop I didn't have that outline, but oh well, things happen. So I need to then convert this into a symbol. It's already done because it's a graphic, and then animate it. So again, basic motion tween here. Yes, it converts it to a symbol. I want it to hang in time, and at this point I'm probably going to need the sound effect, so I can time this animation to the sound effect. So going to the sound effect layer, I'm going to want the bottle rocket sound. Yep, the other one, which is that sound. So all I need to do is actually switch back to the properties tab for this layer. Selecting frame 1 gives me a different properties detail. So you've got to actually be aware of this. It's one of the quirks of Animate. If I select the stage, I get the full rundown of what's going on with the stage. If I select the layer, I can adjust the properties for the layer. If I select an object or a symbol in this case, I get the properties for the symbol. Each one is different, and you'll need to be aware of that. So in this case, I'm going to select my Spaceship Takeoff sound. it's going to play through once, and out of these options it normally defaults to event. Make sure you set it to stream. This is really useful because as you drag the playhead back and forth, you'll know or hear it. So this spaceship, I know instantly I want to start this spaceship animation here. I want the background of the spaceship. So I'm going to just lock in that keyframe at that point. Going back to my layer here. So there are other options where you can start events, stop events, a sound playing. So you have more precise control down to the frame of what's going on. And that's adding sound. So you can now see you can import sound, you can control it via the properties once you've selected that layer. If I go to a different layer, different stuff. Right. And this one, because this is a motion tween, I get a different set of properties here, and I'll get back to these ones later. Alright, so the animation side of things. I want the spaceship to fly in as the sound effects happening. So let's go for, say, a 3-second fly on, or thereabouts. So I should actually free transform this to adjust the size. So this third icon, it's usually third icon down, it's second on this one, but the shortcut key is Q. Holding down Control allows me to control the aspect ratio. So to keep the aspect ratio constant like that. Not holding it down gets the weird sort of things here, the distortion. So if I want to do a little bit of a change size adjustment, I can sort of do something like that, as opposed to a consistent shape like that. If I hold down Alt, it actually gives me the alternate corner of what I've selected, which can be useful in some cases. But for this one, I just need this. And then I'm going to slide that on. And down here, it's already recording the keyframe information. So if I'm going to turn that sound off because it's going to get really annoying really quickly, and set it to start. So that way it just starts the event on frame 1 and I don't have to listen to it constantly. So here, spaceship flies on. Then we have to introduce the Comet Effect. So I'm going to deal with the Comet side of things. So again, frame 1, start with that when you want it to kick in. I don't actually need the Comet to exist prior to probably about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a blank keyframe at that point on my Comet layer, because that way there's nothing there, and then I'm going to bring the Comet into existence on this frame. So grabbing my Comet from my library, I'm just dragging and dropping it in. It's massive. So free transform tool, select a corner, hold down shift and reduce its size. So I have my Comet. Again, on this Comet layer, it's a motion tween. Okay, just to convert it to a symbol. And I now need to have it animate and fly in. So I want this Comet to start there and probably fly past by about that point. So I'm just going to zoom it past somewhere up there. And Flash actually registered the off the key screen keys. So that, and it just stops. And here I need to work in my dodge. So I'm going to lock the above layers and just focusing on the spaceship layer. And at this point, I need just to hook around and curve. So as it sweeps through, I'm going to grab with the black arrow, just move it down here, and then put a little bit of a curve into that so it can sort of see what's going on there. And at this point, I want it to blur and go super fast. So this chunk of the animation is actually going to become rather useless. And I'm just going to remove those frames to clear out that space and basically come in with a new keyframe. And if I just do this, it's just going to extend it that little bit, which is not what I wanted. So anyhow, so the next thing, I'm just going to insert a blank keyframe and have that run through to the end, because there's a certain effect I want to do involving the spaceship. Actually, I've just realized there's another way of doing this. So I'm just going to remove all those frames and extend this back to the end, so basically as it was. And at this point, what I can do is when I insert a keyframe, I can insert a filter at all, and I'm just going to insert all, because the next frame, if I look at the properties of this, I've given all these properties, but if I go to my symbol, I'm given different properties, including filters. And what I want to do is apply a blur filter. Starts off at 4 pixels. I actually want that to start at 0 pixels. Keyframe filter. Move on to a few frames later, so that's about, I don't know, a third of a second. And then again select the object, go back to my filter, blur it up to say 8. I don't even know what the quality will do. Oh, there's a little bit of an effect there. And then keyframe in the filter again, and then finally have it shoot off. Actually, I'll need to keyframe in everything. Wrong place to click on that frame, all because at this point I'm going to have it zoom off, and I wanted it sort of to be flat. For some reason it hasn't. Let's see if I can undo that and then just position it. No, it's doing it again. So we'll see. Whoa, that's going to get oops. That's weird. Oh no, it's this one. So I'm using the greater than, less than symbols on the keyboard to frame advance and to see what happens. I'm not too sure what happened there. I don't want that happening. Alright, so there. Moves up, blurs a little bit before bumbling off. Ideally, I would want that to be a straight line to show speed in terms of my animation principles. But for some reason, it's not. Flash gets a little quirky like this. Generally what I do as a rule of thumb is I'll block out my animation. I wanted to do this in sequence so you could see me apply the different principles as I go through it. But basically I would block out the straight lines, and then I would apply all the modifiers, and then I would work out my curves. But that's enough for this scene. Alright, so yeah, ideally I'd love that to be a straight line, and I could spend a fair bit of time tweaking this to get it right, but I'm not going to worry about it in this case. Now I need to go on to the second part of this animation. So I'm just going to take a bit of a break here, and I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so this sec has been a little longer for me than it will be for you, but anyhow. The next piece I need to add is another scene to this animation. So this is scene 1, I need to add a scene 2 afterwards. Pretty easy done, just go to the scenes window, menu, select, add a scene. Now the scenes will play in sequence, so if I need to reorganize these, you can do so. This is kind of, adding the scene is a bit of an advanced skill, but it gives me a fresh timeline to work with and that sort of stuff, so it makes life a little easier. I still have all my symbols and stuff, but basically I'm just going to drop in a night sky again, as twice as before. In this case the animation is only going to run for about 5 seconds because I'm not putting much effort in at this point. Create a motion tween. This is all stuff you've seen before. Relabel, background, and then basically tween it to the end, and it's animated. Great. So add a fresh layer again, spaceship, and in this case I want 3 other layers, but I'll get to those in just a moment. Back to the start of this, I bring in my little spaceship. I'm gonna outline and hide. Actually, I'll just hide those background layers and lock them so I don't accidentally stuff things up. I've just put that in the wrong layer, so I'm going to cut, select the correct layer, and use a thing called paste in place. This is great for putting in symbols and stuff where you need them so that they match up with previous stuff. And I'm just going to shrink the size of this spaceship and have it again, and my phone is going mad. Wonderful. And this again, motion tween. I'll get back to this motion tween in time, but this is going to be the spaceship dodging around stuff. First up, I need to set up my asteroids. So silly fingers. 1. And I'm just going to copy that name, copy, Control C, and bang, bang, bang. Too many layers, that's Asteroid 2. Paste Asteroid 3, and I'm not even going to worry about that layer, I'll just delete it. Alright, so at this point I want to drop in this one asteroid, but I need to make it at least visually interesting. So on this top layer, drop in the asteroid. Leave it as it is. I'm going to drop in each one in, so I have 3 asteroids to work with. They all look the same, and if you think, you can see here on these asteroids, they're layered one above the other because with this layer stack you look from the top down. Good thing to remember if you're actually doing this stuff. Right, so I need to start distorting the shape of these asteroids to make them a little more interesting. So one way would be to adjust the shape and the rotation. So the free transform's great for this, and if I move the radio button off center, I get better control over where things are set. So this one's great. So I'm just going to insert a motion tween, okay, and that's now set, ready to go, and I'll get to the other layers in a sec. But for this layer, I'm going to start by basically tweening it. I'm going to pause it for about 1.5 seconds, setting a keyframe there. That way, that's where it starts to move, and then I'm going to move it off here to this side, and I have this reasonably boring asteroid flowing across. In space, asteroids have the same speed, but I need to work at how fast to make it a little more interesting. And the way I can do that is by selecting the actual tween layer, or even I think the dotted line with the black arrow. I get access to this properties thing, right? So it's just basically the layer or the motion tween layer. And I can trigger a rotation so that it rotates a number of times flowing across the screen. If I wanted to, I can do half rotations. I can make it clockwise or counterclockwise. And easing is done I've done in other tutorials with you guys, but basically it's either slowing in, down, or speeding up. But I want it constant in this case. So here I might actually just go for 4 rotations. That's nice. And then I'll move on to the next one. So I'll lock that top layer so I don't accidentally edit it, and then find another point to bring this asteroid in. So again, motion tween, okay, because it converts it to a symbol, set my initial keyframe, move along an amount of time, and have this shoot across. Now this is a big slow moving asteroid, so I want to do it a different way. It's different sort of rotation on it. But what you'll notice here is it's bring up the instance name. What it's done is it creates a symbol out of this, and I've talked about symbols in previous videos, but basically it sets this up as a symbol, and this is what you can do with symbols. So, and I did with the spaceship as well, editing filter properties. But for this case, I don't want that. So by selecting the layer, I am able to now edit this. So I'm going to make it rotate 1 time and counterclockwise so that it just slowly flows across. That's great. And I might move the start point down a little bit. Alright, and I'll lock that layer, and I can now see my animation doing things. Great. Then I've got this final asteroid. So here I again want to complicate my scene by adding another motion tween, keying in my initial point. I might even actually use Q to transform it down to something like that. Trying to find some sort of interesting sort of point that might do. Then jump to here. And I'll just keep it on the black arrow because that's simple. So start point. So I'm trying to keep all of them roughly animating across the screen at the same time, just so that you can, it's got a consistent travel speed. So here you can sort of see it going on. So this will be a background thing, and I'll move the spaceship in a second. Again, rotating. Let's go with 3 times, or let's go 2.5. Don't forget there are 360 degrees in a circle, so that's half. I'll just check something because I don't know if it can do 2.5. No, it cannot. That's unfortunate. So we'll put in 180. Something worth remembering. Anyhow, so here you've got this sort of stuff, and that's pretty much done. They flow off the edge of the page, and that's great. So now I need to start the spaceship dodging, and I'm actually going to move it up a layer or two. So here, it's going to have to dodge out of the way of this rock coming in. And basically it's just it's going to keyframe automatically all we position stuff. So I'm just going to drift it up there. Well, actually, I might undo that. I'm going to work out the critical point. So at this point, I want it in that space. So I've locked the other layers. Grab that, move it there. Check for clearance. Yeah, it's out of the way. And now I need to move it out of the way for this one to avoid it getting hit here. So I'm going to wait till it's actually hit and then drift it out of the way. And then here. So it does a bit of a circular path, and I could actually smooth those lines off by grabbing them and moving them. I would actually probably position it here and then grab them and curve them a little. So I'll just curve them a little bit just to soften the angles, because that's one of the animation principles. That's not a great one, but anyhow. So here I kind of want it to delay for a few seconds. So I'll pull that up, and hopefully that's much better. Very happy with that one. So you can see it sort of considers, dodges, and that sort of stuff. And then we could actually make it shoot off into the distance. Bang, done. Yeah, so this covers all the basic skills I want to cover in this video, and that's it. Enjoy.